Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review, and today we're going to be having a look at Grid Runners, or Virtual Combat as it was known in the US. So this movie stars Don the Dragon Wilson, who is a well-renowned kickboxing champ, and he's done a few movies, done a few action films, sci-fi films in his career as well. So it's got a bit of a cult following, I guess, but it's only ever been on the sort of the direct-to-video or TV movie, that kind of stuff. So this film was made in the mid-90s, and the premise basically is it's set sometime in the in the future, and basically the world we live in now, pretty much everyone's addicted to sort of like these like virtual reality sort of games, and a lot of them are sort of sex simulations, and basically it's, you know, this was made in the 90s, so this is the 1990s version of what the future would look like in regards to sort of virtual reality. So you've got them in those sort of like spinny sort of sphere things, and then they kind of literally just they're there in this like world, and most of them are sort of sex things, but there's also a fighting game, which Don the Dragon Wilson he's some kind of policeman. He's called a grid runner, and I guess it looks like it's kind of some sort of border patrol that is kind of to do with computer or high tech sort of crimes and things like that. And he's sort of obsessed with this fighting game called Lethal Combat, and he can't defeat the last boss. There's 10 levels, and he can't defeat the last boss, who's called Dante. And when you're in the fight, the film starts off with him playing this game, and it's basically just obviously the idea of virtual reality is lots of dry ice and kind of lasers and things like that. And you know, he can't defeat this last guy, this Dante character. Now there's that kind of sets the characters up, and then basically you've got the people who actually make these virtual reality games. One of the scientists have actually developed a way to make sort of human clones and pull the sort of intelligences out of the video games and put them into these kind of like clone bodies, with the idea being that they can basically make sort of made to order sex slaves, I guess, and they pull out two of these they make clones of these two of the top virtual babes, and you know, apparently there can only ever be one of these at any one time. So they create these two like female sex slaves with the idea of selling them to the highest bidder. But somehow, and it's not really you don't really find out how, but the level 10 sort of fight character from the game that Don the Dragon Wilson's character plays manages to sort of sneak out as well, and he manages to create himself a body, so he's now in the real world, and he's called Dante. Now the interesting thing with him is he doesn't actually talk, but he has some type of telepathy and he's magic as well, which I'll come on to a little bit later. So he comes out and basically wants to sort of release all the rest of these sort of like game characters out into the real world. In the meantime, you've got this kind of like the boss of this video game company wants to sort of sell these two sex slaves on the market and what have you, and he's trying to sneak them out the border. Now, Don the Dragon Wilson's character, he's a policeman, as I say, and his partner / best friend gets murdered while he's trying to stop these characters, and you know, crossing the border or what have you. And he's killed by this Dante character who wants to sort of try and reclaim these two sort of sex dolls or whatever. And of course, this sends him on this kind of like man on a mission type thing, where he wants to try to track down the both the actual people who made the video game, who were kind of responsible, and then obviously later on Dante as well, once he realises what's actually happened. So cue kind of lots of fight scenes as he's pursuing the boss of this video game. Fight scenes, you know, Don the Dragon was obviously a very, very talented fighter, but I gotta say they were fairly average choreographed fight scenes. They were okay. I mean, there was a lot of these type of films in the sort of 90s, and I don't think this one really stands out as anything more than mediocre. And the thing, and this is true of most Don the Dragon Wilson films, is I don't think he has a lot of charisma on screen. He's a good fighter, yes, but he, you know, there's probably a reason why he's never really transitioned into a sort of a major action star, purely because he's fairly wooden. You know, and he just doesn't have any sort of like spark or charisma to him. He just kind of like delivers his lines in a very humdrum way. You know, and the story, to be fair, you know, is pretty cheesy as too, and the science is extremely wonky in it. So ultimately, you know, he defeats the, you know, he's fighting the sort of these sort of criminal sort of like video game designers, and ends up sort of one of the sort of female sex slaves kind of breaks free and kind of ends up having a sort of romantic liaison with him, and then ultimately he sort of he has to fight Dante in the real world, and obviously he's never beaten Dante in the game, but obviously in the real world now he's obviously on for a challenge, and of course he manages to beat him in the end. Now I mentioned sort of the Dante character, so I briefly talk about him. So he's kind of this long-haired guy in like leather trousers and stuff that looks a bit like a kind of like someone from Motley Crue or something like that, basically. And he doesn't talk, and there's no reason why he doesn't do that, but he just kind of his voiceover is done by Michael Dorn, who was Worf in Star Trek: The Next Generation. And the only thing I can think of, this guy must have had some strange accent or something like that, and they just felt they had to sort of because he didn't even attempt to talk. His mouth is shut the whole time, apart from these stupid expressions he's kind of trying to make. But he can seem to magically make weapons out of thin air, and you know, create fire and stuff like that. And you know, if he's just a cloned body, we're not told how he's managing to do this sort of stuff. This is what I mean when I say he's kind of magic, because it just does this stuff without any explanation. So now, when I first saw this film, I actually quite enjoyed it. But this was, you know, going back, you know, a fair amount of years now, and I've just watched it again just for this review, because I thought I'd see. And I must admit, it was quite hard to sit through this time around, and you know, it really wasn't a great film. I have seen some films from Don Wilson where I think they happened a bit better, but this one, although I kind of remembered it quite fondly, it wasn't particularly great. It's like a very, very low budget version of Virtuosity with added sort of like kung fu in it, but you know, it really isn't a great film. I have to give this one a 3 out of 10. So have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment, and look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.